Alright, so I'm going to be grabbing this rotor assembly. I'm going to try to lift it up the best I can. I'm going to be looking over here. I'm going to watch how I go on, try to make sure I clear this nice and smooth and get down. Now, like I said, that seal sits on there kind of tight, so once I get to a point I feel like the seal's on there, I might start tapping it on with my hands as I'm doing it. And once I get a certain amount, I can almost start putting the front bearing on to help support it. And then I'll use a rubber mallet to tap it onto where that seal gets fully seated. Like I said, you're not going to probably be able to fully seat it by hand. You can get it so far. So I will have to use something like a rubber mallet. I don't want to use anything too hard, do any damage. I want something soft because it doesn't take that much, but it does take more than what you can apply. So just going to pick this thing up. Got a little weight to it. I'm going to look as I'm going, line it up, start getting closer, and then I'm going to try to support it. And there we go. If I can get it a few good taps, I've got it in place enough to where I can get this inner bearing in here. Or excuse me, outer bearing on here to help support. And then I get my rubber mallet and start tapping it slightly. It doesn't take a lot, but it's going to take some. And then I can work on getting the bearing in a little bit more, tap some more. I don't need to go all the way. I can try to go all the way if I want, but when I start tightening it down, we'll be good. Alright, so there we go. Now we can grab, we got the bearing in there. Now we can go ahead and grab the nut. And we'll go ahead and try and get it started. Take your time, make sure you don't cross thread it, because it's kind of an awkward thing to have to hold. Just keep in mind it's down in here. You don't have a lot of a lip. And there we go. I can kind of use the same technique I used earlier. And just start it like this if I want. Or I can use the tool. Right now I'm just running it down. Now, torque from this is going to be 22 foot-pounds. What you want to do, you want to rotate it as you're doing it, because it's going to start seating it. You want everything to line up good. So once you get down to 22, then what you're going to do is you're going to see pretty much where the cutout is, because not only do you have the cutout and the axle tube here for the differential, but you got a recessed square cut out in that lock nut. Not only do you have the 6 holes, but you got the let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 squares. So once you get your 22, you're going to want to back it off to the next square lines up with that one. Put your wedge in. Torque wrench is set at 22. Line everything up. Start going down. Every now and then I'll spin it. Just take your time. Remember, we're trying to slide that seal on this differential assembly, so while we're tightening everything down, that's what we're doing. We're pressing it on. We're getting a little bit closer. I can start feeling it getting tighter. Alright, that's our 22 right there. Now, they want you to go off about 30 degrees. What I recommend is probably, you got a choice here. See, the next one you got right here is probably pushing about 20 degrees. What we're going to do is probably back that off to where it lines up, because if I go to this one, unfortunately I'm backing off a total of 90 degrees, which is excessive for what we need. So I'll go ahead and back it down to the next one. That should be good. We got our 22 already. You just want to back off enough. Keep looking as you're doing it. There we go. Now we can go ahead and get our, we're going to get our wedge, and then we're going to get that retaining ring. Alright, here's our wedge. We'll slide that down in there. Now that everything's cleaned up, you can see things a little bit better. And then we got our lock ring. And we'll just slide on here. Make sure it goes the right way. Because once I said, it's going to snap on. What it does is it goes into the threads. It uses the threads to hold it in place. So just take your time and get that on there. Once it's fully seated, you'll be good to go. Now all we gotta do now is worry about getting the axle shaft on. Now I went ahead and clean this surface. There's a gasket that goes on this one. If it's 5500, it's an O-ring that's on the shaft that goes on. This actually uses a gasket, so if you got a replacement gasket, great. If you don't, what you can do is you can put a smear, I like to put a smear of silicone all the way around here. And then when I also grab the axle and I put it around there, so when I put it, I got a good seal there. Like I said, the gasket's known to tear. This one tore right here, and as you can see, portion's already missing. Still on the axle, so I cleaned the axle surface up, smeared that nice coat of silicone on here, and then I'll do the same thing on the axle shaft. That way I know I've got a good sealing surface and I won't have to worry about it. Now if you can get hold of the gasket, awesome, but this is a method I use because, you know, we don't always stock everything, but I like to use this right here. And this, I haven't had any problems with this leaking. So I do like to set a coat on both, that way it's a good contact surface. Nice, now we got both sides coated with a little bit of sealant. We're going to slide it up in here. Now keep in mind it's going to bottom out. We got to kind of wiggle a little bit because it's got to line up with the gears inside the differential. That may take a little bit of time. Sometimes it's just getting a sweet spot. Try not to lose your patience, because keep in mind the shaft's about three feet long, so getting the end in perfectly can take a little bit of doing. Once you get it in, there we go. We'll start lining it up, fully seat it. Then we get the nuts. They have already some sealant on there from previously, Loctite. And this, when we torque these down, we're going to torque these down to 95 foot-pounds. It's actually the same torque that we use for the rotor to the hub. So we're going to be doing another 95 on these bolts right here. Now we got everything torqued down again. We'll go ahead and get a nice little coat. Brake cleaner on the surface we couldn't get to earlier. And try to get some of our handprints off. Try to get any kind of grease off of it. And we got a good contact surface for the pads to mate to. Nice shiny. Now, rotor, hub, everything's back on. Now it's just down to the basic brake job, which is the easiest part. The hard part's now over, so now all we got to do is worry about getting the mount on. And like I said, we're going to wait on the mount because it's the same scenario again. We couldn't get to the upper caliper bolt. So what we'll probably do is go ahead and try to assemble the mount and the caliper together and slide it on. It's going to be a little tricky, but I think we can do it. Go ahead and get my brake caliper mount set up as far as get my pads up on here. Everything lined up good. Now we're going to work on, we got this pretty much set. We're going to go ahead and work on getting the piston compressed back in the calipers.